Yo, what is up, YouTube? Today I want to talk about, finally, it's been a while, but today I want to talk about the Scorpio Cup. This is going to be a really easy to follow guide, I think. We're just going to be going not too nitty gritty into the details, but give you a general overview, give you some tips for a free-to-play player. It's kind of already being worked on as we speak, but you'll have access to the board, you'll have access to the PNG. Let's just get right into it. Remember to like and subscribe. If this is helpful to you, use code MAMO for 10% off your gamer subs. I want to keep this video shorter than in the past, so let's just get right into it. Scorpio Cup. So it's 2,000 meters. Tokyo on the turf, obviously. It's left-handed. It's counterclockwise. So, notably, Suzuka is going to be pretty cool, pretty strong. It's also our first CM in Global that features soft turf and rain. So we actually do have two green skills that are a little different from what we usually see, which is rainy days and wet conditions. These are the ones that are going to be working, not firm conditions, not sunny days. What are some good cards to grab some green skills with? Well, typically, Suzuka as a character just has really good green skills for this cup. Obviously, left-handed, speed greens are really good. Fine motion, if you can borrow this, is going to be very effective as well. You get Fall Runner. I believe the Simboli Rudolph Festival version also has Fall Runner, so very good there. Zeno Rob Roy for late searches is really nice. Those are some key cards for green skills. Moving on, I do think Asian Flash is a nice option for free-to-play players. It's a gold SR, very available to a lot of people. If you're building front runners, definitely a worthy consideration is Smart Falcon. Smart Falcon is now with prudent positioning, and also she gives you groundwork. So for building frontrunners, Smart Falcon is a pretty cool borrow if you probably want to borrow a max limit break version. Not the easiest thing to do if you're a free-to-play player, obviously. Besides that, I don't really like too many of the other cards in particular, but notably there are more Umas now with access to skills like Rainy Days, like the Simboli Rudolph Festival, the Gold City Festival, right? So just keep note of that as you consider building your character. Let's take a look at the track. So this is the track without any of my markings, right? Again, it is left-handed. You're starting on a bit of a straight, I believe, technically speaking. This is not considered, this section, as a corner or a straight. So there's no straight, like early straight skills, basically, essentially, right? So, over here, though, it is left-handed. It's a crate. Yeah, it's a crate. It is left-handed. As far as, like, downhill, uphill, there's nothing, like, key in terms of, like, the transition between mid-race to late race over here for the hills. I'm going to try and avoid drawing too much because apparently the Excalibur is not liking that very much. But there are a couple uphill sections, notably right here and over here, which makes certain skills like 1.5 million CC. This is a late searcher velocity skill that activates on uphills. Pretty good, I would say. You can either have it as a mid-race velocity skill or as more of a end-game velocity skill after you've already hit your acceleration. So 1.5 mil CC, I think, is pretty nice. Keep in mind that this straight is pretty long. I believe this is like 500 meters, which is pretty long compared to courses like Kyoto, which is the last CM that we had, which has the final straight being like 400 meters. And someone's mentioned in chat, no Highlander, essentially, right? We're not looking at Highlander as like uphill acceleration, just doesn't work, or straight descent as downhill acceleration does not work. But 1.5 mil CC, I do like. If we take a look at the track and skills that are relevant for it, for frontrunners, you're going to want groundwork. You're going to want taking the lead. This is notably available on the Mihono Bourbon Wit card. So if you take a look over here, the Mihono Bourbon Wit card is something that a lot of players have from the event. It's a free event card. So if you're making a frontrunner, definitely run this card. It is very good for frontrunners because it does have taking the lead, which is very good early game acceleration for frontrunners. Besides that, if you want to get an edge up against your opponents, typically speaking, you want like a pair of movement skills. It could be this or it could be this, right? As long as you have two, it's pretty good. If you don't want to have two and you only want to have one, notably prudent positioning is the one that you can have as like a solo movement skill. Why does this work? It basically helps you with like early game velocity, getting yourself into a good position. Okay. Besides that, you have Professor Curvature, Medium Corners. These are very key skills for this track. Other than that, I mean, let's take a look at the acceleration, the heals. Notably, Christmas Ogre is going to be available for this track, and we will talk about this a little more. Besides that, though, what are the acceleration skills that are good? Well, we have Mejiro Dober, who has Moving Past and Beyond. She's going to be new. Her skill is going to activate pretty much on this corner, but it has the duration necessary in order to carry on into the relevant portions of the race. This also applies to Maruzensky, the original Maruzensky, not the Summer Maruzensky, who has Redshift. Redshift as well has like a 4-second duration. It is this one over here. Basically the same timing as Mejiro Dober, if I'm not mistaken. You also have Angling, Scheming, and Let's Pump Some Iron, usual suspects. It's on a corner. It's hitting the late race. So if you can get these skills to proc, they're very good. Whether you inherit them or on the character themselves. Notably, you probably want Angling, Scheming on Runaway Suzukas, which, spoiler alert, is going to be pretty good. Final Push, Unrestrained. These are front runner acceleration skills that are going to be pretty key. And notably, Unrestrained is pretty hard to get, but except on like the Runaway or front runner Suzukas. Silent Suzuka, that is. Keep in mind that Nimble Navigator in this CM is not going to be that great. Or rather, Nimble Navigator is fine, but No Stopping Me, the golden version, is not going to be that great. It's not going to be that consistent. And so if it's not that consistent, that makes the upgrade to gold skill being kind of a risky buy and taking away those skill points from buying other skills. Because it's not as consistent, I wouldn't suggest getting No Stopping Me, but Nimble Navigator is totally fine for anything that's not Runaway Suzuka. Yes, frontrunners can get Nimble Navigator, and it is because I do think personally, and this is something that a lot of people think, this is going to be a frontrunner heavy meta. But besides that, let's talk about the stat requirements. Now, there are no stat thresholds. There are no stat thresholds. Previously in the Libra Cup, I believe the stat threshold was like power and wit, if I'm not mistaken. And by meeting these stat thresholds, you get speed boosts, right? Depending on what, where you are in the threshold. If you have like 900 or 600, there's none of that here. There's none of that here. So definitely don't think, don't think about stat thresholds. We don't have to meet any of those here. Yeah, power and wit. Let's just talk about the stat requirements and what are the general ideas, the general takeaways. So, right, the general takeaways of the stat requirements is you want to meet the stamina requirements, right? Which we'll talk about in a little bit, right? But it's around 700, 50 plus, 800 with a golden heal, at least for like a glass cannon, right? And we'll talk about glass cannon and tanks in a bit. But meet the stamina requirements. Try and get your speed as high as it can be, noting like how many speed cards you're using. I don't think like 4 speed cards is going to be that very like recommended, right? But if you're free to play, maybe that's the only thing you can do. I don't recommend any more than 4 speed cards. I think that's like the absolute max you run. I would say that's even excessive. Like 3 is probably the most I would put it up to. But just try and get your speed as high as you can with it. I know like you're going to see 1200, 1200, 1200 everywhere. That's just considering like the speed cards that you have, okay? Because there are other cards that you would like to run instead, or instead of like speed cards. As a sort of second or tertiary stat, tertiary meaning the third, that you want to pump, it's going to be wit and not power, okay? The reason why wit is going to be very important is because in this CM, frontrunners are going to be very strong. You can almost count on a very strong pace setter to be in the CM. And because that's the case, pace down mode, pace up mode, these are going to be very, these are going to be things that a lot of people are going to want to take advantage of. right? And basically you get more bonuses and reduce the effects of these. It's hard to explain. Pace down mode, you reduce the effectiveness of it by having more wit. And pace up mode, you get more bonuses with it with more wit. So with strong pace setters, wit is just going to be more important. Front runners are going to be very strong. So count on there being a good pace setter, and count on wit being very important for this race. Notably as well, notice that you do have this big downhill section, which again, wit is something that helps you out with, right? So we're going to prioritize wit more than power in this race. And finally, guts can be used to compensate for lacking stamina. So you might want to throw in your friend card Haru Urara if you're absolutely free to play and you're lacking good cards. It's definitely not a bad pick, okay? Besides that, though, there are two concepts that we want to talk about with regards to stat requirements. There's glass cannons and there are tanks, right? We want to talk about, like, the umas that, or not necessarily umas that fit these archetypes, but rather just the builds. Glass cannon, the idea is that you're not going to be prioritizing or accounting for debuffers as much, and so your stamina is just going to be a little lower than what is otherwise your tanks that are designed to tank the stamina debuffs from notable umas like Nice Nature. Nice Nature is going to be in full effect for the CM, and you can almost count on there being at least, not at least one, but a good amount of them in your lobbies, up to 2, right? If you're not running one yourself. And so you're going to see some stamina debuffs, and if they are in full effect, you probably want at least one Uma that can tank all of this, right? 2 Nice Natures with 2 golden debuffs and a bunch of white debuffs for your stamina as well. So with that in mind, I do think that, personally, I think that like having a tank is not totally necessary, but you just want to be able to have that option, or just to be aware that if this is something that is very prevalent, then having something that can resist the stamina debuffs, at least one of your Umas in your lineup, is something worth considering. Personally, I think it's fine to just have glass cannons, or rather the normal Umas that aren't necessarily meant to survive 2 Nice Natures with fully decked out stamina debuffs, personally. That said, these are the stamina requirements, or the stat requirements. Feel free to look at this yourself. Again, the whiteboard will be available to you on the description below, and you can see over here that we have heals. Basically, if you have 780 for a front runner, right, you want 1 gold heal, right? 800 as a pace chaser, you want 1 gold heal. Christmas Ogre has her own thing, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but this is basically the stat requirements. Again, 1200 speed is just as much as you can get with the speed cards that you have. Okay? With the speed cards that you have. Nothing too much to talk about here. Obviously, as for tanks, you want your stamina to be higher, right? To resist. I personally don't think you're going to run into many lobbies. If you're talking about, you know, your 80 races, your 80 races, right, between round 1 and round 2, I personally don't think a lot of them are going to have, like, 2 fully decked out Nice Natures looking to destroy your stamina. You might want to have a tank for your finals day and maybe for round 2, but I don't think it's worth spending too much time on, especially as a casual player. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Besides that, right, let's talk about some of the skills that are going to be important for each of the Umas, or for each of the strategies, right? But actually, I think what I would like to talk about are the decks. You can take a look at this yourself on the skills that are important for each strategy, but I think the decks are just going to be a little more important. And I think we already talked about some key skills over here as well. So, the decks. Most of the decks are going to look pretty similar and the same. You're going to want to run at least 2 speed cards, and sometimes 3. If you're free to play, maybe even 4, in order to get your speed as high as it can. But you definitely don't want to run more than 3 or 4. If you're running a runaway or a front runner, notably, a lot of people are running the Smart Falcon power card. The reason, again, is because she has prudent positioning, and she provides groundwork. Rico, Rico is just always really good to meet your stamina requirements. Also makes Unity Cup, training very, very easy to do, right? And you always want to be training Unity Cup. You don't want to be training your Umas with URA. Make sure you're running the Mihono Bourbon wit card if you're running a runaway or a front runner, right? It's just the best wit card for front runners, hands down. Besides that, you're going to notice a lot of nice natures. If you're needing a gold recovery skill, if it's not innate, if it's not already on your umamusume, basically what I'm trying to say is if you're not playing Umas like, I believe, Ogricap, who has Gourmand on her kit, then maybe you want to run Rice Shower as a power card or Super Creek. Personally, I like Super Creek more, but some people, just to get more luxury stats, maybe want to run Rice Shower for the power. That's totally fine. Remember, again, Rice Shower and Super Creek, they have Swinging Maestro as their golden heal skill that they provide. Besides that, we could talk about how most of the decks look, which, again, are going to look pretty similar, right? Stamina Sparks, and make sure that you have, 2 or 3 speed cards with wit cards, Rico, right? And gold heals if you really want it. That's pretty much the skeleton for every sort of position. Again, wit is just going to be very important. Late Surgers do have more of a capacity, I guess, to build as a tank, as well as Pace Chasers. I mean, being honest, you have like Special Week, and you have a lot of Pace Chasers with Gourmand or Race Planner on their kit. But also with Late Surgers, like Xenorob Roy exists. And Xenorob Roy is a speed card, which is pretty cool to have with a golden heal attached to it. Xenorob Roy giving you guys Lion Weight. Lion Weight is a golden heal. Let's just take a look at it really quick. Xenorob Roy is a Lion Weight sort of distributor, right, for Late Surgers. Besides that, end closers. This is typically what the decks look like. Again, not too different. End closers, though, as should be sort of like implied from the track, are just not very good. I probably should have mentioned this a little earlier, but end closers are just not going to be as good in this race because the final straight that is still within the late race is just happening a little too late compared to Metro Dober's ult, which activates here, Marzensky ult, which activates here, and Ryan's and Satan Sky acceleration seals, which are activating over here. It's just not as good, right? So just end closers are going to be having it a little rough this CM, which might be a nice change of pace for a lot of y'all still thinking about, I guess, Libra Cup, right? Let's take a look at this tier list. Now, I wanted to do this tier list because I wanted to talk about 1 or 2-star Umas that are common amongst free-to-play players and players on a budget, etc., etc. Why is because these are not only going to be useful to the majority of players, but because they're going to be what you face and see a lot in your lobbies. Why is because they're just going to be a little more available and a little more easier for people to acquire, right? Especially if they're saving their carrots. So, what are some really good Umas here? Mambo has been released. Mambo has not been released. We just like to put Mambo there because why not? But we have Maya no Top Gun. Maya no Top Gun as a frontrunner is definitely worth talking about. Maya no Top Gun has Leader's Pride. Her unique skill is very good. It provides target speed and acceleration on the final corner. This skill or this condition is not too difficult to activate, in my opinion, in this race because it's similar in some respects to the previous cup that we had. I believe Virgo, right, chat? The previous medium cup that we had, in that the late race acceleration is going to cause a lot of Umas to kind of like fan out, right, in terms of like their position. And so block side is going to happen a little more often, I think. And so you're going to see Umas like Maya no Top Gun take advantage of that, as well as Team Opera O. With that said, final corner, having speed acceleration around this time, right? is just going to be very, very effective, I think. You have Leader's Pride as her innate skill, not even something you need Awakening for, which is just a mid-race velocity skill, which is very good. You also have Nimble Navigator that she can grab, as well as a natural heal. I would not suggest getting No Stopping Me. She has a secret event, which is pretty easy to get. All you have to do is win 4 G1s, one of each being a frontrunner, pace chaser, late surger, and closer. You need 1 win for each strategy. It's not too hard to get. And by doing so, you get access to the acceleration skills for each strategy, right? And for frontrunner, you're going to get final push, and that's going to be very good. You might, some people might run her as a pace chaser with head on. Personally, I don't think it's really worth talking about too much. You have Major Orion as an Uma that's particularly going to be pretty good as well. Major Orion, I think, is going to be good because her unique skill, Let's Pump Some Iron, pretty good duration, very good efficacy, works at the exact right timing, and 6th place is not going to be too hard to get for late surgers in a frontrunner heavy meta. So I definitely think that you have a pretty good potential with Major Orion. On top of having a really good unique skill, she also has Killer Tunes, which has been buffed since the November 11th patch. She has Rising Dragons. She has medium straightaways. Her kit is just really good for this race. So I definitely think if you're looking to play on a budget, you want to participate in the CM, Major Orion is definitely a really good late searcher to consider. You have Dawa Scarlet as a pretty good frontrunner and pace chaser. Dawa Scarlet has Race Planner built into her kit as a pace chaser if you wanted to. You have access to Killer Tunes for a frontrunner. Pretty good, just velocity skills in the mid race. Prepare to Pass also works. I don't think her secret event, which does provide head on, is worth doing. I think it requires you to race too much in Unity Cup. But her other kit definitely has a lot of assets. And Resplendent Red Ace is a skill that can activate a little later. And if by doing so you have access to good speed, good acceleration, great duration at a pretty key moment of the race. Besides that, we're not going to talk about all of these, by the way, especially not the C, D, or Yikes, because, again, I don't want this to be too long. But Winning Ticket is definitely worth considering. She is a late surger. She has access to a lot of late surger velocity skills in her kit. And the only thing she's kind of missing are heals. But you can get that with Zeno Rob Roy. You can get that with Rice Shower, right? So definitely worth considering for Winning Ticket. Besides that, I definitely think Grass Wonder is worth talking about because she has access to Dominator. And I think Dominator is also very strong. You could also run Dominator for Agnes Tachyon. Agnes Tachyon, even as a pace chaser in a frontrunner heavy lobby, it goes from Agnes Tachyon as a pace chaser with Dominator, never activating it, to now in this CM in Scorpio, maybe activating it in half the races. I don't know. Right? Because there are so many front runners, pace chasers are not going to be so much in front, and dominators definitely can happen a lot more often. So Agnes Tachyon definitely has her own merit, and with her unique skill, her heal, I definitely think she's B tier. I don't think she's A or meta because it only activates on corners and only in certain positions. It's kind of finicky, right? But as a dominator holder, I definitely think she works pretty well as both a pace chaser or a late surger if you really want it to be like absolutely sure Dominator's going to fire. Dominator, again, being a pretty big speed velocity debuff. Besides that, let's talk about the good ones, the really good ones that are going to be standing out in this meta. And that's going to be the Silent Suzuka. Silent Suzuka, why is she so good? Not only does Silent Suzuka have access to Runaway, a strategy that puts her in front of other frontrunners, she has access to left-handed. She has access to early lead, which is an acceleration skill that is upgraded to unrestrained. Okay, this activates at a perfect time. It's on the final corner at a random point in time, which maybe isn't on like immediately in the final corner, but a little into it, which is exactly what you want to see for this race, right? Some random point in here, chances are unrestrained is going to be perfectly well timed, right? You have access to fast pace, a mid race velocity skill. You have access to concentration, which is very good for front runners, and especially good, almost mandatory for Silent Suzuka, so I definitely suggest getting this. Besides that, you have access to, I think Final Push. Sorry, I think Final Push is the white skill for Unrestrained. Early Lead is your early game acceleration skill. That's my bad. Which is still very good, by the way. Everything that a frontrunner needs, Silent Suzuka has. And Silent Suzuka, besides just all these, right, she also just has Runaway on top of it all. So I definitely think Silent Suzuka is going to be a very defining piece of this CM, of this meta. And because she's going to be a part of this this track, she's going to be setting a very fast pace. That's why every deck I do think is going to want to run a lot of weight cards, and why even if Silent Suzuka isn't that strong, right, because the stamina requirements are just a lot less from something like Libra Cup, you're going to see other frontrunners, such as Maruzensky or Mayano Top Gun, who we talked about earlier. Maruzensky is going to be very good as a frontrunner just because her unique skill, Red Shift, it's the best acceleration. It does activate a little too early, like some people may notice. However, 4 seconds is enough, is good, and is able to carry through. It's not going to be the best when inherited by other Umas, but on herself, on her own kit, then her acceleration is going to be pretty well timed. She also has Early Lead, Straightaway Adept, Focus. It's not that important for this track as a frontrunner, but because she has access to one of the best accelerations, that is a very easy condition. You only need to be within the top 5. This is just a really good skill and makes Maruzensky a pretty resilient, pretty consistent character for this track, in my opinion. The last thing I want to talk about are possible strategies, right? Possible team compositions that you're going to be running. Again, personally, I don't really like stamina debuffers. I don't think they're worth running. I think, you know, if you want to run it, if you don't have that much time on your hands and you just want to throw a nice nature on your team, throw a nice nature on your team. But I think a lot of people are going to have enough stamina to resist her effects. And so I don't personally think it's worth running. Double speed debuffer. When I say speed debuffer, this is primarily talking about Dominator, which is on Simbly Rudolph, Agnes Tachyon, Grass Wonder, right? These are Umas that are going to have access to Dominator, and particularly, I think even as Pace Chasers, again, are going to be applicable here. We do say over here that, you know, solo tank ace, double glass cannon ace, it's worth considering to run a tank, right? Or an Uma that is going to resist the nice nature debuffs. Personally, I think you might see it as a budget option in a lot of people's teams. You can probably count on it being in your final race, and so a tank could be fine, but I just don't think it's going to happen in a majority of your races. So do with that information what you will. Runaway front pace. This is probably going to be one of the strongest strategies out there. Runaway front and pace, right? By doing this, you set a really fast pace. You make wit very important. You also have a higher degree of chance to activate dueling. Dueling is a pretty good mechanic. And with high enough guts, you can sort of, in the final straight, propel your team of umamusume, who are in the front, even more further forward, right? And to prevent them getting overtaken. Again, this final straight is 500 meters. So the duration, the timing, the efficacy of dueling is very strong. So definitely consider running this if you have access to Silent Suzuka, okay? But besides that, pretty much anything goes, right? This is a pretty freeform sort of CM. You don't have a lot of stamina requirements, so, you know, we're not saying, hey, put so many gold heals. It's not too bad at all. But yeah, I think that should just about cover it. You will have access to this whiteboard, so make sure you take a look at all of this information. Leave a like and subscribe if this was helpful to you. Thank you guys for watching. Use code MAMBO for 10% off your gamer subs. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.